Hey, read through the word. Today is December 13th, and today's lesson is called God Owns Everything. So before we get started, I know everybody's always looking at my earrings and my t-shirts. So today's shirt says, I'll be home for Christmas, and the H is the shape of North Carolina. And my students, Christmas week at school, have been bringing me gifts. And my Bible students, I think I got 5 or 7 new pair of earrings from my kids. So this is one of them. And there'll be more that make their appearance. But the kids know my earrings and my shirts. And if y'all are in, see, I can't show you my phone. But my phone case, and then they know I love swig cups. So I get those. And so, like, I always match. So it's just funny. It's something for the kids to know me by. That and my love of coffee. They know me for my love of Jesus and my love of coffee and the Bible. So, here we go. We are in James chapter 5. And I know last year, I think I covered James chapter 4. Because James chapter 4 verse 4 is like my favorite. You adulteresses. James does not hold back. So today we're looking at James chapter 5 verses 1 through 6. It says this. Look here, you rich people. Weep and groan with anguish because of all the terrible troubles ahead of you. Your wealth is rotting away, and your fine clothes are moth-eaten rags. Your gold and silver are corroded. The very wealth you are counting on will eat away your flesh like fire. This corroded treasure you have hoarded will testify against you on the day of judgment. For listen, hear the cries of the field workers whom you've cheated out of their pay. The cries of those who harvest your fields have reached the ears of the Lord of heaven's armies. You've spent your years on earth in luxury, satisfying your every desire. You have fattened yourselves on for the day of slaughter. You have condemned and killed innocent people who do not resist you. Ow. He doesn't hold back. He continues to challenge Jewish Christians about their faith. And we all know, most people know the verse in James that when James says that faith without works is dead. What he's saying is true faith produces good works. And true faith affects how we live. So y'all know I teach at a school, and this year, so every year changes. This year, I teach a 7th grade English class. My kids who work hard. And I did some really hard stuff with them the last 2 weeks. And I gave them a test that was going to push them a little bit. And they did so good. I was so proud of them. And then I teach a 9th grade Bible class. And I do theology and apologetics with them. And then I teach English. This year I have an English 2 class. I'm teaching English 2 honors. I have an AP class that I teach. It starts in January. I'll teach an AP Human Geography class, which I love. And then I also teach personal finance. And so this verse and everything it says has everything to do with what I have been teaching since August. I've had a class of 16 students in that class, varied in grade level. So I think my youngest ones were 10th grade in there, but I had 10th, 11th, and 12th grade in that class. And personal finance. And we started off with this very idea. God owns everything. Jesus, in the Gospels, Jesus spoke more about money than anything else. He spoke about money more than he did heaven. He spoke about money more than he did hell. And he talked a lot about hell. But he talked a lot about money. Jesus said that how we use our money says something about our heart. So we see that in the Sermon on the Mount. Remember the rules for the kingdom, how we're supposed to live things out. Matthew 6, 19 through 24 handles these ideas of what it is. He also, in Matthew chapter 19, verses 16 through 24, Jesus teaches on these same ideas as well. But in James, we see the warning to the rich in James does two things here. It actually gives comfort, because what you have is these Christians who are not. Now, James is written to the Christian as a target for their faith. What does your true faith look like if you're a Christian? So this is the idea of Christians who do not know how to walk this part out. And so he's not talking to unbelievers here, which is what makes this part right here really, really intense and a little scary. But he's calling out Christians who have wealth on their treatment of the poor, and how basically they're getting rich off the backs of people and how they're treating them. So this warning gives comfort to the poor, because it tells them that God sees and God knows, and it is not right, and God will judge. That God holds us as Christians accountable for how we treat each other and how we treat others. But the warning also teaches Christians the proper stewardship of finances. If we understand God owns everything. That's the very first thing I taught my students in personal finance. I said, we're going to approach this from a biblical worldview. And so we need to understand that God owns everything. So if you will look, I will write all these in. You can go back and look this stuff up later. But Psalm chapter 50, verses 10 and 11 says this: "For every beast of the forest is mine, the cattle on 1,000 hills. I know every bird of the mountains, and everything that moves in the field is mine." Everything belongs to God. We are stewards. What is a steward? And so most of my personal finance class is what it's like to be a steward of the things that God has given us. A steward is a person who manages and looks after the property of another. Matthew 25:14 through 30 is called the parable of the talents, but it's about stewardship. Because what we need to understand is we own nothing. Everything belongs to God. Every day of the year belongs to God. Everything on the earth belongs to Him. We would have nothing without Him. He owns everything. God owns everything, then we are His stewards. We have been charged to use what He has entrusted us with to serve His kingdom, His people, His purposes. His kingdom, His people, His purposes. The only reason God allows us to have is to be generous. We are to be generous for His kingdom, His people, His purposes. God did not call the government to care for people. God called the church to care for people through their finances. I mean, if you go read the beginning in Acts chapter 6, that's the complaint that's going on in the church at that point that they bring to. That's why the deacons come, the idea of deacons come, because the apostles need to set a time. They are, the preachers of their time. They're to set a time for prayer and study to be prepared to preach the gospel. But the deacons were set apart to serve, to make sure the widows had, to make sure no one was hungry. And the Hellenistic Jews were being left behind. And they came to the apostles and they're like, okay, we need deacons and we need to handle this. This idea that we have so that others can be taken care of. Because sometimes we're on the receiving end of that. Not because we'll receive it. And I'm not trying to put forth an idea of a prosperity teaching here. But I told my students, I said, this is how this works. Quite a few years ago, when our old house was up for sale, I can't explain to you why, other than I believe we were not at that time, our finances did not look like they were supposed to look, I don't think. I really can't put my finger on why we were struggling so bad. I think it was just a learning point in my faith, honestly. Because we were tithing, we were, and it wasn't, I can't put my finger on why we were struggling so financially, other than at that point, our house was for sale. We had to be out of the house a lot. We had to eat out a lot, and we didn't have the budget for that. And we were really, really struggling. And, I did not talk to anyone about it other than the Lord. I spoke to the Lord and I prayed. And one Sunday at church, someone said, "Hey, Lisa, they're at the front desk when you go in the worship center. There's something for you there. They've been looking for you." And so I went up there, and there was an envelope with my name on it. And I opened it. There was nothing in there but money. And it was $500 cash in there. And I just bawled, because it was a lot of, it showed me God heard me, and He was taking care of us when I couldn't even buy groceries. It showed me that people who are prompted by God act. They don't ask questions. We're not judge someone in a situation. We're just we're held accountable on our faithfulness to what God has said for us to do. And it really did open my eyes to what generosity looks like, and how we are to look out for the kingdom, for His kingdom, His people, His purposes. And so everything. I hope you hear this from me through every lesson you ever hear me teach. Everything's about the kingdom. Everything in our lives about the kingdom. Your work, your marriage, your children, your parents, your parenting, and your bank account. Everything is about the kingdom. Now, there is rare that I do this. I am posting a sermon in here. You don't have to watch it if you want to. This is my pastor and my church. And our pastor just so happened 2 weeks ago to preach a sermon on generosity and what that's supposed to look like. And it was such a biblical sermon, and it was so good. The next day we watched it again in my personal finance class, where my students took notes and they wrote an essay on their plan for their future finances based on biblical ideas. So I would love it if you watched it. Please comment in here. I'd love to hear others' testimonies of the faithfulness of God to you in this area, and how He really does mean what He says He does. We'll see you next time on Read Through the Word.